So my name is Megan Blevins. I'm Director of Customer Success here at EON, and I'm happy to present our panel. I'll be moderating. We have a couple of questions that are kind of pre-thought through and all that kind of good stuff, so I have some slides where we'll just kind of go through them a little bit, but then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So anything that you might want to ask, just hang on to those questions and we will make sure to go through them. I am going to have each of our presenters introduce themselves, and we're going to do a lot of passing of the microphone, so make sure everybody can hear. So I'm going to start with Sean.
Yeah. My name's Sean Glumace. I'm with 2CPR Group, and Angela Allison's standing in the back there. She is my business partner as well. We both come from the community college side as well as the K-12 side here in California. We were the statewide technical assistance providers for all of the career pathways here in the state. And so we ran around the state helping align everything with our K-12 partners and our community college partners. Now we work with multiple districts, not just here, but all over the place, helping them implement their CTE money as well as their programs. So we got a lot of implementation we can talk about.
Hi, I'm Mary Gallagher. I'm the president of Los Angeles City College. Los Angeles City College is located in central Los Angeles. We are the most densely populated area of all of Los Angeles. We have 50 high schools in our service area, 50. That's a lot of high schools in a service area. And most of our population is low income. The students who come to LA City College are about 50% Latinx, about 17% Black African American, about 12% Asian, and about 10% white, and then we have other populations. The college is going to celebrate its 100th anniversary in 2029. Just a couple of other interesting points. Where LA City College is located is the original home of UCLA. UCLA was there for 10 years before they moved to Westwood. Also, Cal State LA was located at LA City College for its first 10 years before they moved to Monterey Park. So I look at us as the public higher education location for the city of Los Angeles. And so it's a great place to work because the students who come to our college really have a lot of need. I first engaged with EON, believe it or not, in 2018. And a couple of my deans came to a presentation that EON gave here in Irvine, and they came rushing back and told me I had to do this. So a month or so later, I had a demonstration myself personally, and I knew that day I have to do this. It many times felt like I had a really heavy rock that I was trying to slowly get up a really steep hill, but I never stopped, I just kept going. The reason for that, the #1 goal for using EON, is because I truly believe that it democratizes learning for all of our students. Everyone does start at the beginning, and everyone has an equal opportunity to get to the finish line. So that's why it's really important. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is James Rice. I am the Vice President at IBT College, and I am from Canada, and yeah, get that out of the way. So IBT College is a career college. We're a vocational training center where we help individuals transition their careers. Perhaps they're Canadians who've lost their jobs and looking to seek new careers, or they are new Canadians coming to Canada from overseas. And certainly when the pandemic hit, what we saw was a tremendous transition of career choice into healthcare. And IBT College has been in operation for over 20 years, and we've never seen anything like what happened during COVID. And as we entered COVID and the issues that we faced with COVID, the situation became necessary for us to train with Zoom, as probably everybody else was doing. And we saw the explosion, we saw the potential happen for training online, and people liked it. And in Canada especially, we were reaching remote areas of Canada that we couldn't reach normally as a brick and mortar school. And we said, look, there's an opportunity here to grow and expand without having to build new colleges everywhere. We can grow and expand our services anywhere, and we needed a platform that would allow us to do that. And EON, that's when I met Dan, and I had a lot more hair. And before I met Dan, and after all the problems, how are we going to do all this? We figured it all out, and we've grown tremendously in a year, and we've been able to expand without expansion. We've been able to help employers retain employees through education. We have been awarded a number of different awards from our ministry here in Ontario and in Canada, and valuing what we're trying to do, which is to bring what the industry needs, the healthcare industry specifically, together with what we can do educationally, and bridging that gap and using EON. So one of the great things that we've been able to do retaining employees is we've been able to rapidly hire and train those employees for healthcare jobs. Then, while they are in those healthcare jobs, using the EON platform and using different self-learning modules, we've been able to keep them growing and upskilling through that process, which has allowed the employers to maintain their staffing needs during the healthcare crisis. So they don't have to lay anybody off, or not lay somebody off, but rather allow them to leave and come to our school. Traditionally, they would leave their job and go back to school to get a healthcare career. And we're saying, no, we don't want them to leave. We want them to stay in your job. When we bridge the gap that way, and EON really helped us to do that. And since that time, we've been expanding our use of EON. We've been doing work with virtual flight attendant simulation. So doing what you saw a little bit with the flight with the pilot, we've been doing the same thing with flight attendants, especially with new Canadians who have maybe language problems. How do we get them to understand all of the other English terminology that maybe they know? And we also been working, creating a virtual film school as well. So utilizing the EON platform, part of the reason why I'm down here is to work with our partners from Hollywood to train people out using the virtual tools. Why not have a Hollywood expert teacher class rather than Bob, the university professor who's been doing it for 25 years, teach the class? We can have them do it now live online, or at least through flipped learning type of modules and capstone projects. So fascinating stuff that we're developing. And our expansion has been done right across the globe. Not only in Canada, we have partners in Philippines, we have partners in India, we have partners in Jamaica, where they've all seen and said, hey, we want to utilize your tools. So we've been expanding across the globe that way. So the platform being agnostic and being cloud-based has allowed us to grow into these new markets where we never expected to be.
And the Wisconsin girl in me is going to try really hard not to let my Yooper come out when I hear you talk. Hear it in my own voice. Don't you know? All right. Again, we have a few questions that we have kind of pre-prepared, but how has EON XR or EON XR-like technologies helped you create more engaging and effective learning experiences for your learners? And I'm going to start with Sean. We'll just keep
work our way down.
Yep.
So one of the things that I'll probably keep coming back to today is how many of you are in K-12? I think most of you are university level or college level, correct? So we work on both sides of the fence, as you do too, especially at the community colleges. But currently we've been working with our K-12s to actually overhaul all the curriculum at their campuses for their career technical education. And in California, without going into a really long, there's a lot of standards we have to adhere to for our funding for career tech. And starting with really ChatGPT 3.5, we finally had a platform to standardize our curriculum and build our course outlines. And so starting there was essential for my teachers, because most of them, once again, they're K-12 teachers, they got a million other things going on, even more than our university professors and college professors. And so we came in And using AI, we were able to adhere to our standards. So we have a thing called UC A through G. That is our standard for our K-12 courses. There is a format for that. So we took all these standard formats that we have to work with to get our funding. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about too is I was going to come back to our money. Where do we get the money from to do these things, to buy this software, to do that? But we're in the middle of doing that with one of our districts right now in Southern California. It's about 85 classes. That normally took a process of almost 2 to 3 years to do that with all of our teachers. Pull them in, go through it, all of our standards and everything else. So we've been able to utilize AI to speed up that process, to create those prompts. And that's what I keep telling my teachers is, and this is something that I've seen with all of this technology, is they're scared. They're scared. And they look at it and go, my job's going to go away, my students are going to go away, they're going to do things, there's going to be cheating, throw a dart at the board, we can come up with something. And I tell them, I go, no, it's not. You're a facilitator now. Think of it that way. We facilitate this information. More importantly, and this is where the EON and all the other software that's out there, is we need to learn the prompts and work with the prompts. And you saw that today, going in and building those prompts and building it out. And so we started doing that, and now we have these course outlines that are standardized. We went through that process with a brand new course a couple months ago, and this was in the early 3.5, not the 4.0. And it went to the UC system to be approved. Humans check it there. We did it, first time it's ever happened, 3 days, we got approval. Normally that takes 3 months, 3 to 6 months. And that was, we didn't even tell them that the AI was involved. We just built out the class, sent it, it came back approved, we're good to go. But that standard's there, and I don't want to get into that side of it too deep into the weeds, but it is something you need to think about, and you guys can commend what you did with the money and getting all your teachers trained, and you have a process in place. That is a difficult thing to do for a lot of people, especially if you're a smaller school or you're a department trying to build out something. And that's where this company helps really bring in all of that structure here. And getting back to that course outline, we saw it a little bit earlier when they showed how the library can pull existing material and existing templates and course, I don't want to say outlines, but assignments. Let me go back. Those existing assignments, those walkthroughs and everything else, is taking that technology, building that consistency like we did at the one district, then taking those units and allowing the teachers to choose what they want to do in the classroom, but have that consistent outline. Angela and I always tell the teachers, the outline is just the skeleton, and we can use AI to build a strong skeleton that everyone can work from. But I might have 2 different teachers teaching digital media, much different approaches. It's the syllabus that this software and all the things that we're seeing up here helps build out all that muscle and skin and everything else. And so that's really what I see. And that's all going to change tomorrow. I think Dan said everything's going to change in a couple of days. But what's not going to change is the creative side of it, being the facilitator and being able, and I keep telling my teachers this, learning how to prompt correctly. And that goes for the students too. We need to teach them to ask the right things. And so that's where I found all this software, it's easy for them. It's not, what's the best word for this? I got a brain fart here. But it's not scary for them when you say, no, just prompt this and walk slowly through this. Go step by step. It's no different than chatting on your phone with your friend. You're going back and forth with it. And so that's, I'll pass it on. No, sorry.
Thank you. I talked about it democratizes learning, and I believe that learning is individual, and this actually creates the environment for learning to be individual at the most fundamental level. And that's both for instructors and for students. And we believe that the results that we've seen already so quickly are a result of the engagement that the students have from the very beginning. And it's not just the engagement of the students, but it's also the engagement of the faculty in looking at how they can deliver instructional content in a different way. One of our most popularly downloaded lessons is called The Bridge. And if I asked you to tell me what you thought The Bridge was about, everybody I've asked this question of couldn't guess what this lesson is about. One of our English professors created this lesson, and he used the bridge as a metaphor for creative writing and the elements of doing something that's an effective piece, writing creatively. And the benefit of that and the advantage of that for the learner is that those students who engaged with that lesson, all they have to do is think about the bridge and they can remember all of the components. It's the same English professor that did the Pantheon that you saw in the example that Marcy showed earlier. That was his way of helping students engage with how to effectively write a paragraph. So it's that kind of level of engagement and an individual opportunity for students to look at it over and over as many times as they need until they really grasp it and can remember it. And I think that when students are able to see things that they don't have to interpret from 2-dimension because they're seeing it in 3-dimension, that is a direct learning opportunity. There's no interpretation involved. Just like you saw from the example of the chemistry molecule in a textbook versus what the molecule really looks like. So what we've seen in this very short period of time has such great results that it's something that we're going to continue to push very hard on our faculty incorporating into their lesson plans. So as Marcy said, it's not the entire class that is done through XR, but it is the fundamental concepts and those that are really, really difficult concepts for students to learn that are the first elements of the class that are put in these lessons. And I can't wait to see what else our students will be able to do and what our faculty do in a very, very creative way.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think a couple of things. Number one, what we've enjoyed in terms of learning is being nimble and being quick. So we were able to quickly develop 15 different micro-credentials in a matter of 8 months. We created 15 healthcare micro-credentials in 8 months. We were able to pilot them out with a national employer. We got 4 pilots through, and after that we secured a contract to train, number of contracts to train 1,500 employees using our micro-credentials, depending on the funding, because we're socialized Medicare in Canada, so it depends on the government. But we've got, in principle, to train 1,500 employees. All that done in 8 months. That's how fast we were able to work with the employers to get the material ready and used for their workers. And I talk about Mary Poppins, our material. In this situation, you know, you watch Mary Poppins, they come alive. You know, maybe some young people don't know Mary Poppins, but the street work, she comes alive. They come alive, right? And they start dancing around, right? I mean, that's what we can do now. We can Mary Poppins the work. We can just bring it off the page of a textbook and give it to the students. So those complex anatomies and swallowing, there's 3 different ways we swallow. Did you know that? I had no idea. What? How do we explain that, James? I don't even know what that is. So we got to draw it out, get the animation going. We show that. We show the cell animation. I mean, I don't know what a cell does, and we get the protein in there and all of this stuff, and we're able to detail it and show them. We're able to show in our palliative care the process of a dying body, and that's nobody knows how that happens until you live through it. And as a support worker, you have to go through that. And the last one, the big one, was genitalia. How the heck are we going to show genitalia on Zoom? Okay, keep your pants on, everybody. We got models, and we can 3D it. We can show it. So that was a critical piece that we've been able to do. The other really cool thing that we can do is the AR rooms. So how do we show someone walking into somebody's apartment to identify the health risks of the fall risks of the seniors? 30% of people in long-term care are in there because they've fallen and broken something. So how can we identify that? So we built an augmented room that the support worker can identify the different areas that are dangerous And so that helps to recognize that, and we've got a kitchen, we've got a bathroom, we've got a living room, we've got all these different rooms, so when they walk into a house, they can identify the different risks. And then we're able to also add full simulation into the EON platform, so they can click, download, if they have the goggles or headsets, you know, which their children do, they're able to utilize it. And we've created a dementia brain, so we can put the healthcare workers inside the mind of a dementia patient so they understand what it feels like to have dementia. And we're able to build empathy. What VR can do, that we talk a lot about science up here, but we can build empathy. We can help the healthcare workers understand what it feels like to have these issues that seniors, in our case, seniors, go through. So a lot of that is what we've been working on. And of course, we've talked a little bit, somebody mentioned it in one of the other ones about the flipped pedagogy. That's really, really important in my mind, and I think that's the future for learning with ChatGPT is how do we flip that switch. And so we've also expanded a lot of our offerings with the virtual film school and flight attendants as well. So working on a lot of different ways to engage learners.
I love the Mary Poppins our material. That is one of those things where I've always talked about it as a instructional designer and lifelong educator. I used Mickey Mouse, and when he's the sorcerer in Fantasia, and so you get to pick up your wand or whatever, and you get to be the person who creates the experience. And I always thought that that's a beautiful analogy for how can educators approach, like you were saying earlier, Mary, that idea of how do we get people, or I think it was Marcy, I apologize, but she was saying we're hearing our educators say in a different way, now it's about the experience for the student to have. And I think that's really tremendous.
I need a newer analogy than Mary Poppins. Does anybody have
You
one?
can use
I mean,
Mickey
it's
Mouse.
perfect, right? But I think
Harry Potter.
Yeah, Harry Potter.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay, all right. He has no idea, right?
This one is, can you share any examples of how EON XR has helped your learners retain information better or apply what they've learned in real world scenarios?
All right. One of the things that we're doing at, it's actually Downey, which is a school district here in the LA area, and we have our very first audio-visual pathway that's backed by an industry partner. So VIXA, some of you, but basically all the stuff in here falls into that category, from your projectors to all the Crestron stuff and everything else in here. And one of the areas that we're having issues with is we have 60 students, it's a brand new program, we don't have all the equipment in place. And so you saw what Rena had showed earlier for the audio equipment and how to use it and those things. That's where we're starting to find usage in our high school setting, is we just don't have the funding, or the funding is backed up and we can't get orders through fast enough. So how do we show a kid how to unplug and plug in all of our different cables on the back of a mixer? Or how do you hang up lighting and all those types of things? So we're finding that's where we're moving forward very quickly in the classroom to actually get that trained, because then they have to take standardized testing with a VIXA. So VIXA has their standards that are worldwide. And so by tying that in that nice virtual setting, saying this is how you plug this in, if they do it wrong, I'll do it again, and we keep building on that until we actually get the physical stuff in. And that started happening halfway through this semester. So all of a sudden all this equipment showed up, and it allows them to have that standard taught to them. They could pass their certification as well, that's industry recognized. But having that ability to look, feel, touch without actually having it there, and it goes back to what both of you are saying, all of that flipped classroom, everything else with our distance education, but actually having it in the classroom and on site, where we have the kids go out and do something in the gym or in the auditorium, or hopefully out in the field as well with our companies. And working with those companies too is like Crestron, we had a big conversation with a couple weeks ago. They're the ones who do all the panels. That's a Crestron panel back there. So all the installation on that, they have a standardized system for it, for all of their installers. And so we're saying, well, how can we help integrate that? So getting the industry to adopt this as well makes it much easier for us. And like you were saying, Mary, like that bridge, one of the things I'll say too is getting standardization for those courses and those assignments that cross over into all your pathways. Maybe humanities and biology, but I'm kind of talking from the career technical side here. We all have safety stuff that's across the board, be it automotive, AV, like film and television. OSHA is a big one as well. I'm hoping there's some OSHA stuff in there, or someone's going to build it, because OSHA 10, OSHA 30 is an easy one for us for our culinary, for any of those. CPR, first aid, we saw that earlier. Those are the areas that we're seeing helping standardize our curriculum across the board in the district. That goes back to what I said earlier with our course outlines. Now we have content for those teachers to put in their syllabuses, and everyone at all of our campuses are doing the same thing. Because it does go back to money here too, for us, is if we're standardized for certain things, it makes it much easier for us to go after the money here in the state of California as well as at the federal level. It's easy for us when we go through our audits. So there's that backside to this too, taking this technology. And we can say when we're going through an audit, we call it a federal program monitor, or FPM, that no, all of our students are doing this. This is, and we show it to them and say, this is how they're doing it. And it makes it much easier for us as the people being audited for that money to continue getting that money and pass those audits. So there's that backside to it, not just the forward facing to the student, but what's happening on the administrative side. It really makes our life easier when you're doing a couple weeks of auditing, going through a WASC accreditation or those types of things. Being able to pull this up and show very quickly, this is what they're doing. And for those of you who've been through audits, it's much easier to say, this is what we're doing, and then we're done. And we move on to the next thing we got to fix. So those are the things we think about.
They're scared. What's that?
Yeah, or they go, oh, that's neat. And that's the end of the conversation. And we move on to the next thing we got to fix. So that's where we're seeing that as well in the real world. Not just that forward facing, but it's helping us on the backside as well.
I had a couple of examples that we've already shown you. So let me talk about two other things that were really, I think, major contributors to our students' opportunity to learn. One area was we were teaching a mammography course. So our local hospital asked us if we could, we have a radiation technology program, if we could add mammography there because they were having a very difficult time finding enough people to take care of the patients that they had. And so our biggest challenge was trying to find the right materials for students to be able to learn. There was not good information in textbooks to help students really understand the construction of a woman's breast. And so through doing the lessons in XR, the students were able to immediately grasp the complexity of the construction of a woman's breast, and it made all the difference in the world between the class that had finished before and the class that subsequently finished using the XR lessons. So we saw definitive difference from that. In addition to that, we have students who are in a program of dental technology and learning all of the different teeth in the mouth, and all of that was very challenging for students. It would create a situation where it would take longer for students to finish their fundamental classes just because of that one component. Having the construction of the teeth in the mouth, for the students to be able to not just see, but drill on. It was the quizzes and keep drilling on that and focusing on those areas that were very difficult for them to understand. The students who had gone through the prior semester versus the students who had gone through using XR was a dramatic difference in the period of time it took the students to complete those fundamental classes. So this is a very, very, very different way for students to engage with educational content. It works.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, the flip model is really, really key, and the augmented rooms have been tremendously successful. And the visual learners, you know, they just absolutely love everything that we've got with EON XR. And I think what they didn't the students, and you can read the comment up there, is that they learned everything very quickly. And during the pandemic, the staffing shortage was so unbelievable that we were getting calls. We need to train 3 people here, we need to train 2 people here, we need to train 4 people here, and it was rapid. And we had to make sure that we were sending out our healthcare workers, and they were well trained and they were vetted. And that was the rewarding part. And as the student says, that what EON made us look really great, because they thought, wow, I don't know how much time you guys spent on this. Well, we're doing it pretty quick. We're doing it pretty fast to try to get it built and get it up there, so that we can give you a 24/7 access. So if you're out there on the job, you're able to work and learn quickly. So I think for us, in terms of the retention, when we hear back from the employees of how we were able to prepare them rapidly during the pandemic, as that student comment states, was very, very rewarding. We knew we were on the right track. And the second point was, as I mentioned at the beginning, was retention through education. Now we've got to upskill them. Okay, we survived the pandemic, we got workers out there, but there's more training that we need to do to make them a better healthcare worker, a dementia care, palliative care specialists. We got to look at all of those elements now to continue the training. So those are some really great opportunities for students to upskill through the EON platform.
Thank you, guys. All right, so this one I think is really critical. Being in customer success, one of the questions I get all the time is, how do I get people to use this? How do I make this work? How can we have success like we've seen described today? So what advice do you have for educators or trainers or institutions who are just starting to explore the use of immersive technology like EON?
This is me as a teacher, and this happens, I taught digital media along with Rena, and technology moved pretty quickly then. Now it's like light speed. Things are changing by the day in what we do. And so whenever a new technology comes along, especially something like this, that can be overwhelming for an individual teacher. So I'm going to talk to the individual side while you're the larger scale, because in reality, most of you are probably going to be in that situation, right? Where you adopt something like this, and it's not the entire school to start with, or it's maybe just a department or a division, is pick the one thing. This is where the EON platform comes in. That's been helpful for me, is I could take my course outlines, put it in. Now with the new 4.0, that's been integrated as well. And that library that they showed earlier with the projects is really match up to what I have in my outline or my syllabus, and pick one. I know that sounds simple and it's kind of common sense, but I think what happens is everyone bites off a little more than they can chew in the classroom. Pick one thing and start with that. Yeah. Yeah, and small too. Don't pick it as your final project that we're going to do this. Look at the introduction stuff, or somewhere right in the middle, where if you do flub the whole thing, and we do it all the time, it just doesn't work with the students, we can come back, figure out what went wrong, and then re-implement it the next time around. So while I'm not talking about that large-scale deployment, it really is for those individual teachers. There's a lot of fear right now too, and that's the conversation I've been having the past few weeks with all of my teachers and administrators. We were in Sacramento at a thing called Educating for Careers. Everyone was talking AI, and everyone is scared of it, and they don't understand, or it's just too much too fast. And I just, like I said a little bit earlier, they're facilitating. You're helping to facilitate these students to use another tool. And this is the same thing with this. If I was talking to a teacher, I go, it's a tool to make your life easier, to make sure those students retain and get a good experience. That's, I think, another thing too, is we have an entire generation of kids now. My kids all went through high school during COVID. And one's in college, one's going to be graduating, and I have 2 more that just went into high school. So I'm right in that sweet spot of it was all screwed up for them. And I had one that figured out to sit at home and sleep and get A's online. I had another, I had to send him back in the middle of the pandemic because he wasn't going to graduate high school unless I put him in the classroom. And they're coming out with that experience now. And so taking technology like this and software and the experience and saying it's something different. They've already been through, let's be honest, a bad experience online. Either in Google or in Canvas or whatever it was, and they got a book thrown at them, and they had a teacher came on and said, read the book, do this, and they just sat there and did really nothing. Or the worst one was PE online. Don't ask me how that was happening, but my kids had to do PE online. So they're coming out of this with, they're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be online. It's having that fun experience, and I think that's what EON brings to the table. Is it's not just going back to that model. It's just not a 2D thing in a book. It's something they can now literally touch, look at, pull up, watch videos, integrate, all these different mediums that they're used to as well. And probably most importantly, I tell my kids this that I'm teaching right now, is you got everything in your pocket. I mean, you got a studio in your pocket now. There's films being shot on this thing. You have it all, it's there. And so we're coming to them. We're bringing that content to something that they're used to now. And so that's probably the big thing if I was talking to a teacher is pick that one thing, make it fun, make it a great experience. And if you don't worry about it. We can come back and figure it out. There's so much in the library. There's so many things out there. But just get that first step in and then do the second and the third. And then that's where it grows to. I think you probably found that. Once you had one or two teachers and everyone saw it, that's the growth there. And not everyone has the money or the time or the rollout for it. So one person, one department, make it fun, and don't be afraid of it. Jump in. Because if it fails, you can just move on to your next thing. That probably worked for you before, but you can save it. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I think for us, really making the commitment to putting this in practice, having a definitive roadmap for it was helpful to us. So it was a definitive goal for the institution. It was my goal for the institution. It was one of my initiatives that I talked about all the time. And I didn't let it go out of people's minds. It was something every time I had a meeting with the college, I would bring up where we were with EON and what we were doing. So you have to have that commitment, and it has to be important. You have to invest in training. We invested heavily in training, in developing training tools, and everyone who engages with it has to be trained. You are not given access to the system until you have the training. And the training continues to improve. Each time we put a group through, we learn more and we improve our training. It is really important to focus on quality. We put a rubric together with our first group. The peer review that Marcy talked about is really important. Having people work together. We put people into small groups with a coach that help to keep them on track and going. You have to have a process that people can go through in order to get to the end of a lesson and have it be a success. Equity is in everything we do, but in my opinion, this is all about equity because it puts everybody at the same place with the opportunity for everyone to finish. So I believe equity is woven through it all. And then the last bullet says, keep everyone apprised. You have to talk about it a lot, over and over and over. And if you think you talked about it too much, you have to talk about it a lot more. Because this is something that is not intuitive for people. Until people experience it, they don't really understand what it is. It's some sort of foreign, what do you mean XR? You have to get people engaged with it, everybody engaged with it. We started to roll out demonstrations now. The first group we demonstrated it with were absolutely blown away. We demonstrated it to a group from our district office who were extremely skeptical. We did a demonstration. The most skeptical person of the group walked out with me and said, wow, this is amazing. And it is. So talk about it a lot, get people thinking about it, and it'll happen because we need to make it happen for our students.
Very good, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think I'm just going to echo, start with simple lessons first. I like to get students to teach you. They get it faster than we do. I remember when I was substituting science class, I had no idea what the dark side of the moon is other than what Pink Floyd told me. And I just sat in there, what am I going to do? I don't know how to teach this. So I said, students, teach me. So they taught me. And that was the best experience. So the best way is, you know, if you're nervous about technology, get in front of them and get them to teach you. And again, try to think in 3D. We think about textbooks and PDFs. Stop thinking about textbooks and PDFs. Throw out that thinking. It's there, it's always going to be there. But how do you bring that Mary Poppins to life? How do we think in 3D and think in bringing that textbook alive? What can we bring out of that textbook? So I think I echo Sean's statements a lot, but I would just add, use your students. They're the best. They are so fast, much faster than we are. They will teach you so much.
Thank you, guys. I think that if I can just take a second to summarize a little bit, that idea that what I hear being echoed is there's both top-down, but also then bottom-up efforts being made to put forward the initiatives. And it is an initiative. It's something that needs to be built upon. That idea that if in any endeavor, I don't care if it's XR related or anything else, if I'm trying to get my kids to vacuum the carpet every day, right, because the dog hair is piling up, I want the carpet vacuumed. If I don't remind them consistently that that's something that needs to happen, if we're not bringing it up, if we're not bringing it back to this is, yep, we're doing that XR thing. Oh yeah, that XR thing. Yep, we're doing that. Yep, do you remember that? That's what we're doing. We're going to do that thing. It's no different than, you know, getting people to do the carpet, which I'll let you all know in a blog post if my son actually vacuums the carpet. Got my fingers crossed. Challenges you have faced in implementing, I think we kind of covered that. Yeah. And I want to do a time check. How horribly over am I right now? Yeah, I think we're over, like by a lot. But it's a good conversation.
15 minutes.
I have 15 more minutes?
I have a question for them.
All right. I think we should, take questions. I can always show the amazing responses that I've gotten from students. I'm going to leave that one up there because that's my favorite. All right. Yes, question.
It's actually with Dr. Gallagher. Given the current economic and enrollment issues that are affecting the California community colleges, and I know that you have to get outside funding, do you have any insight on how other colleges or K-12s can actually evolve into the world of XR? And because I'm thinking, is there a possibility, a reality of a corporate partnership to allow that to happen, or some insight? Because again, we have an enrollment issue which drives a portion of which drives funding, which drives how much people can invest, and we are also a budget crisis. So how, given that this is so important, do we then flip the reverse engineer to make it happen besides at one school?
So that's a good question. Thank you for asking. I believed in this from the very, very beginning, but I also knew that the road to making this happen was going to be very challenging, not the least of which because of money. And I put a concept together and pitched it to some very large foundations and thought I would get some traction there and got no traction. And I think that very early on in this, I knew that the opportunity for licensing content would be the ability for me to make sure that it was sustainable and that it continued. Because we've created almost 1,000 lessons, but that will be the end if we don't continue. And in my opinion, it needs to continue at an exponential rate to really meet the demand of the upcoming students. They're going to demand this. Anybody who doesn't think that is probably not going to be around in another 5 years, because once this starts to take a little bit of traction, students will want this, they'll demand this, and they won't go to my institution if I don't have it. And I want to be relevant, I want to be there, I want to be in the game. So to directly answer your question, from the very beginning, I knew that in order to make this sustainable, I would have to be able to license it. It has been a battle for me with my institution. I am from a very, very bureaucratic system, a very large, one of the largest in the country, community college systems, but I do not give up easy. My background is business. I've got an undergraduate degree in business and an MBA. So I look at things from the standpoint of how can I sustain it? So I knew licensing was the key. I'm this close to be able to license, make our content available for licensing. Once that happens, we know what the structure is going to be. We know how we're going to go forward with it. We already have the plan in place. So it does take resources, and it's going to take more resources as we go forward than where we are today because of demand. The demand will increase exponentially, and it will be a challenge for us to meet the demand. That's why we need a lot of content creators, because there will be more and more demand.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, just really quickly? Is which I understand. I used to be a dean at the community college level at Golden West. So, faculty senate. You talk about politics. How did you get them to buy into change? Because I understand faculty senate can be the death of a president.
So, well, interestingly enough, that's a great question, because when I first brought this to the campus, the faculty went crazy. You're trying to replace us, you think this is gonna be better than we're gonna be, and so what I shared with them was, this is exactly what happened in the 16th century when the printing press was invented. Faculty at that time thought the printing of textbooks would replace them. This is something that enhances the classroom. It does not replace the instructor that's there to facilitate the learning. So I did get major pushback, but fortunately we had a pandemic that happened right in the middle of it, and technology all of a sudden became really important. So when I had done the survey of who wanted to do this before the pandemic, I had a handful of people interested. Post-pandemic, it wasn't post-pandemic, but a year and a half into the pandemic, when I did the survey again, I had 100 faculty members from across disciplines at the college who were interested. We had a wait list from the very, very beginning of faculty who were interested. So I think if you build it, they will come. You can't shove it down anybody's throat, but I'm telling you, the students will be asking for this. So faculty are going to have to come on board, or they're going to become irrelevant.
If I can answer the money question a little bit, because I know that's a great question out there. How we did it was we went to industry, and this is where the be nimble, be quick philosophy comes in. So where is the industry need? Where do we have a need? Let's go to that industry. Let's take it to the industry. Let's pilot with the industry. Let's get their feedback and bring it to the board or wherever that you need to bring it to, so that the industry speaks and says, hey, this is a great product, we need more of this. And we also brought it to government and said, look at what we've done with the industry. Now I've got my faculty on board, I've got my board on board, I've got my industry on board, and now I just need the government funding, give me some money. And sure, let's try it out and pilot it out. And so that's what we were able to do. Getting industry on your side is great, and we look at the virtual film school that we're developing right now. 15 to 29-year-old market, they're creators. There's a creator economy. You can go to the industry, your BIA, and say, look, we can do grade 12 apprenticeships. We'll give you a virtual intern to go to work with you for the summer, and maybe you'll pay them, and you get some of that feedback, and they'll create videos and TikToks and all of that stuff. And that's what kids can do for businesses. And you've now got a whole handful of pilots that you can bring back to your faculty senate and wherever else you're going to run into as well. Regarding this, can I? Before I'll shut up because Canadians talk too much. Will this replace teachers? I have a funny story to tell. A year ago, I sat down with our teacher and showed them the EON and said, we want you to create your healthcare lessons. And she said, oh, this is going to replace me. You're not going to need me in a year. Yeah, I'm going to lose my job. And I said, no, that's not our intention. That's not what we're doing. So a year later, just this past Tuesday, she said to me, James, I can't. There's so many students. I can't do it all. So what we've been able to do, and it prevents burnout, is we've been able to put the programs out so that students can complete them on their own, and walking beside them instead of an AI assistant is our nurse educators, so that if they have a problem, they can come and ask our nurse educators and go back in and back and forth, and then at the very end, our nurse educators vet their skills and make sure that they've got what they've learned. And what that allows for nurse educators now is that they're teaching dementia care, palliative care, safety and mobility. They're teaching all different subjects every single day. So they may get a student question about dementia in 1 hour, and the next hour it might be palliative care. They might do a group on safety and mobility, and there's no burnout because every day it's fresh, it's exciting for the teachers, and they love it. But their first reaction was this was going to replace me, and I said no, it's not. And last Tuesday, oh my God. It was too much work.
Real quick on the funding, how many of you are California? Okay, how many of you are a community college? I don't think there's many K-12. Any other community colleges? Okay, so I'm not going to go into depth on this one, but there is a lot of funding out there on the CTE side, and it's going to continue even with the budget crisis. So we have K-12 Strong Workforce, which we think is going to continue or may roll into CTEIG. So there's a lot of acronyms I can throw out here, but one of the things is, yes, you may be a private partner or you may be industry or elsewhere. There are opportunities with that funding that is actually allocated already for this year. We're finished. So another thing to keep in mind is our grant cycle is pretty much the fall. So right now we're finishing up Perkins as well. How many of you know about Perkins? So I'm talking very career technical education here for that end of it. But the federal government has funding that goes to the states, that goes down to the individual schools. We have state funding, $440 million for both CTIG and K-12 Strong Workforce just for 22-23. We are looking at another $500 million one-time funding from the governor for our K-12s. It's called Golden Pathways. That hits in September. It's supposed to be a little bit earlier, but that's a 3-year spend cycle. And so, sorry, I'm getting into the way I think here is, how can I sustain something over multiple years? We're looking at those things. Now, it may not be available to all of you because you're a university or you're a private school, but that doesn't mean you can't partner with your K-12s. So in the case of our K-12 Strong Workforce, it is K through 14. It's partnerships between the high schools and the community college. These are the things we can buy with it. Those are the things that are written into it. Golden Pathways is specific to technology and healthcare. So something like this with EON, it covers all of our different pathways. Once again, I'm going very CTE here, but all those pathways can be covered with something like this. And also too, I've been asked, well, we buy it with CT money, but then our, like the math department can't really use it and things like that. But that doesn't mean we can't have our other pathways build the content that can be used in those areas. And so you have to think outside the box. Sadly, we all kind of think inside the box in our system because that's the way we've been trained. But stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, where the funding's coming from, it's going to continue. So it's written into law. So even with the budget issues, that money's going to continue in California. And that's not just to say California. Texas has it. Florida has it. There are other states, and they're very similar to the way we're set up here. A lot of them look to us in the system. But I will say this, for those of you in the public side, catch up on Perkins, because all the other monies, the K-12 and the CTIC, it's run like Perkins. It uses the same rules now. So it makes our life easier when we're writing to these things. But once again, I know a lot of you are college, university, you're not what we are up here, but that doesn't mean you can't be a partner as part of it. Or if you're an industry partner, we need that. One last thing real quick, someone asked about advisory boards, and You have to do them as CTE. That's a requirement under Perkins, and we do them. That's part of what we do at all of our K-12s and community colleges. But that doesn't mean you can't do them with your humanities and math. But the easier way is get those departments mixed in with your CT departments or those voc ed or whatever you want to call them. But get that crossover, because this crosses over onto both of those. I'm sorry. Question?
Not a question, but just to tag on to about replacing teachers, which James said. Oh, thank you. Just to tag on to what all of y'all have said about how it's actually great for teachers. In our case, for example, we were able to hire some of my former students. One of them works with Mary, as a matter of fact, and another one, her name is Nikki Baber, and she's going to be teaching our content production class. She has 2 billion views on TikTok right now and growing. She has 6 million followers on TikTok. She's 24 years old, and we've opened up an opportunity for her to be one of our teachers because she does it all the time really successfully. And that's where we're opening up an opportunity for this, so it's really great.
What's that name again?
Nikki Baber,
Thank you.
What school?
Virtual Film School.
All right. The 2 things that I'm hearing, content creation and money. So content creation and money, that is exactly why EON has the marketplace. And I know that, Mary, you had talked to licensing and making sure that I know I've sat in on many meetings where we've talked with lawyers as far as copyright is concerned and all of that kind of stuff. So that creation of content is available via the marketplace. So if you're not familiar with are you familiar with the new marketplace? Dan is. So the marketplace is the opportunity for people who have created lessons to sell them. It utilizes Stripe, so you sign up for a Stripe account, and it's all within the EON XR library. So you can get access to those 1,000 lessons that Mary is talking about and be able to then utilize those by purchasing them for your institution. But in the same regard, when you have maybe a difficulty in getting, maybe you don't have the funding. Okay, we don't have the funding to pay people to create these things. Okay, you might not have the funding to do that, but if they want to take that thing that they created on their own and put that up for sale and it's good and people want it, right, then that's going to generate some revenue in that regard. Yeah.
And just, 80% of the revenue goes to the creator, and 20% goes to just pay the bills, so to speak.
Keep the lights on.
Yeah, to keep the lights on for the marketplace. Yeah.
I have one observation and a question. Observation, Sean, you mentioned about funding. Recently passed the Chips and Science Act. It's about $300 billion, and out of the chips component, there's a $5 billion for workforce development. And I was talking to Mary, during break, and I encourage everyone who are in higher education to really go after that money. That money is being distributed by Department of Commerce NIST and NSF. So I suggested you look at that component. Now the question is for you, you mentioned that one of the problem or requirements for XR and AI integration is prompts, developing questions. So what are your strategies for teaching students how to develop questions? So that AI, provides you the right answer. Thank you. Thank you.
So, I'm going to speak from a personal standpoint. This is in the classroom. I said a little bit earlier, start and tell them it's a chat between you and a friend. So start with your idea. Go, this is what I want to do. But I always tell them too, and this is really the AI side, is how is the AI going to, what is it going to be? Like, write a course outline as a college professor, or write a course line as a K-12 professor. And then we start with that story and start working through, and then say, this is the unit we're working on, here's the course we're working on, this is what we're looking for. Maybe we have, and once again, I'm just going to use this as my example, then standards. We need to adhere to the UC A through G standards in the state of California. Please reformat them into that standard. Look at these, oh, my brain just shut off. The standards, the state standards. We have an entire state standard system. That took me a while to figure it out, but it was through a conversation back and forth. I would go, no, that's not right. No, or you're using old things. And so getting the student to think in that regard. And to be very honest, I come from a creative background. I taught digital media. So it's how do we explain something to the AI that's going to produce exactly what we need for production. I say we need 11 by 17 or A4, 8 by 8.5 by 11 letter, like formatting. And then what? Do we want Art Deco or do we want mid-modern century in a poster? Like if we're going to create a poster, it's walking it through. And that's where I think, getting back to right here, to replace the teachers, that's not going to replace my experience. It's a tool. It's no different, and I was talking a little bit earlier about this, it's no different than I learned to do graphic design by hand. I was a hand letterer. I came at that we already had the Mac. We were using Quark. We had Photoshop and Illustrator 1 and 2. But I still used the exact same skill set. It was just it sped up my time. I was able to do things quicker. I was able to produce more, and that's what's happening now. A little earlier, I talked about doing the course outlines. I can do a course outline in 20 minutes now, where it took me 2 days. And honestly, in a format, it's better. I mean, it's consistent. I'm able to submit the same thing. But the content is unique to that. And so working with those, and I'll just go back to just calling it a prompt, is I approach it as it's a conversation between the two of us, just like if you're chatting with a friend. You go back and forth until, go ahead, Dan, sorry.
No, I don't, because I'm fascinating. But can I say I'm an old man, because I'm 60, right? So in France, I'm close to retirement, especially. I'm getting closer to retirement every day. But here's the thing, right? The people that discover these technologies, that actually discover OpenAI, this is scary, right? They are surprised of what it does. You figure out the guys that figure this out should know what it will do. They don't. In fact, if you read a 98-page report of GPT-4, one of the experiments they did is they gave it $100. They say, go make some money for me. And not only that, but just say they kind of they pretended that it got loose, that it actually escaped jail, and it can go loose and become overwhelming power, just to see how it reacts. This is a way of the safety procedure, because eventually, if we don't do alignment, this thing will go crazy, right? We'll decide to make paper clips of all of us here. So we need to make sure that we do it right. But they don't know. So my recommendation is, I spent this weekend, I don't recommend you doing that, but I spent this weekend probably close to 30, 40 hours talking with it and probing it and understanding. And I fail a lot because you need to rethink the way you think about it. Like, give an example. ChatGPT 3 has a memory of a couple of 1 page or 2 pages. So it's like talking with my grandpa when he had Alzheimer's, right? He doesn't remember what I said before. But GPT-4 is amazing. So it goes very fast because just that little detail makes a huge difference what you can do with it. So my humble recommendation, clear mind, one. You said it very well. Know what you want to do. Think through that. So before I even go to it, I think through very clearly what I want to do. Frame it. Framing is something we humans are very receptive for, meaning that if I say something to you, I'll give you a good example. So if you say to an Asian lady that Asian people are much better at math than Caucasians, I don't want to get in trouble now, so sorry if I'm Swedish, so I can excuse. So if you say that, but then you say, then she's going to do better in math. But if you say to her, listen, overall females are doing not as well at math as men, you're going to do worse. Exactly the same with the GPT-4. If you frame it, it's going to go through that direction. So now once you get the prompt and you make it more and more and more clear, and once you get the prompt right, then you can use it very consistently. So my prompts are now 2 pages, but when I feed that prompt, I know exactly what I get. So try again, fail, try again. It's like everything else in life. And be on the, it's $20, right? So if you go to GPT-4, everybody can afford it. If you have $20, so for $20 you have all the knowledge in the world. And you can do anything. And you are your own, look yourself in the mirror, because you are the only obstacle to greatness. Okay, sorry, that was a long one.
Good answer.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
Sean has a prompt that we can look at. We are at the end of our time, so if you have additional questions, you can, if you send them to us, then we will get answers for you on questions that we didn't get a chance to get to.
So what you're talking about, this is my 2-page prompt for a course outline for standardization for the UC. Basically, this is a K through 12 course outline. This is what we use to create our course outlines right now. This took me a few weeks, and I started with 3.5, and when 4 hit, I had to go back through and do it. But it was great because I noticed the differences. I go, okay, but it's basically anything in bold is what we change. Everything that's not, we keep the same through here. And so when we're done with it, we end up with, sorry, let me scroll through. You can see it's about 3 pages. Come on.
Can you scroll down?
Yeah, no, there we go. But I want to point something out here. This is all I had to work with from the original course outline, was 5 bullet points for the course outline. This for the construction class. And when we went through, I actually already ran it in ChatGPT because I was doing this a little earlier. Sorry.
Did you try GPT-4?
Yes. Oh yeah. No, I don't even go back to 3.5. But they capped us now. Sorry, but they capped me, so now I'm not happy about that. The other day I ran out of my 25. They actually only allow you 25 in 3 hours. So I'm like, even paying for it, they're capping you on the paid side too, which really makes me not happy. But this is what I pay.
They have multiple accounts.
Yeah. They need like a corporate one.
I have another device.
So this is what I pasted in. So exactly what you're talking about. I sat down, worked through it, put in the information from our course outline, the course, all this, put it in. Like I said, not much to work with here. This is really all I had other than the course descriptor from the state and from our school. Then I tell it create 2 assignments. Sorry, I'm not gonna go through all this, but this is what we now output every single time in the exact same format. That's my key here, is we're doing 82 of these right now. There's 10 of these in every one. We're over almost 1,000 units in all different areas of CTE. Some of these, I have absolutely nothing, right? Dance, right now, we have nothing on file for courses. So I've got to start from, like, I'm just letting ChatGPT go on those and go, okay, fill out as much as you can. But what we found, and this is going back to the EON side, taking these assignments, it's generating out my assignments from nothing. And so I'm having to look at these, but matching it up to the existing stuff in the library is where I'm finding the key here. You can see, we got to do a description, examples, topics covered, after these are the course after completing this unit, and we have to do an overview. It's kind of repetitive, but the state wants me to do an overview. Now we have consistency, going back to what I said earlier. When we get audited, this is going to clear audit, no problem. Like, they're just going to look at this and they'll see 80-something classes all laid out this way. I'm not going to have them picking through all my stuff. And if they do, it's right. So, sorry, I see Angela saying something back there.
No, so just so Sean doesn't forget, so I'm Sean's business partner, so I actually help him do a lot of this course outline stuff. Then it's not just, Sean's the expert and he just creates this stuff. We then vet it back to the teachers.
Yeah.
So the teachers are just in love with it because they no longer have to handwrite this themselves. And we get to review it every year, and it went from being a year-long undertaking to now we give it to them. Our executive assistant's out there, she does the standards, make sure that it's aligned correctly. All they have to do is review it and give their approval. And so they used to have to take days and days away from their classroom. Now it takes them less than 30 minutes to review and approve. And again, it's all about making sure that the government likes what they're doing and it's audit proof.
But yeah, getting back to the EON side of this, now I can take this. You're actually looking at the form that we have to submit. This is the state form. So we've taken that, and over here is our state standards that we have to align. I got GPT to do our California state standards. It took me about 3 days of back and forth with it. It had a lot of trouble with it, and it has to do with just the structure. It was very difficult. But what I was going to show you real quick, my last thing, this is what it looked like before when we got our hands on it. This was the course outline that was with the state that was already approved. So basic house framing, a sentence and a couple things. Now I can come back in here and, now mind you were looking at biology, but it's the same thing here. So, but taking that to that next step with what EON has, I can then take this and tell it through the AI to start finding me what I need, start building out from here. There were no assignments for this. Now at least we have assignments to start with. And now I have something, going back to what to ask. Now I've got something more to ask the system and build upon and pull out and everything. So that's, to back up what you said, it's exactly, you get pages of these prompts, but it takes time. It's not magic.
And the beauty of EON and Dan working for 40 hours in a weekend to build prompts is then we get to build those into the app. So that there are things that you can access via the library that are already utilizing prompts like that. So I wanted to say thank you to the panel. Really appreciate you.